Okay, so here we are, ready to start South Mountain. I'll show the box again because this is really the beginning of my coverage of South Mountain itself. The intro was largely CWB, a little bit of the RSS changes. My play is going to be factored in a little bit by what's provided in the game. Unfortunately, South Mountain does not provide detailed breakdown of artillery values, so I'm going to have to play with the abstracted artillery system of the series, of the regimental series rules. Therefore, we'll just be marking them off on here. But remember, guns can go low or out of ammo through die rolls with this system, and when they do, they have to pull back and resupply. So it just really removes some record keeping and precision, but who knows what's really happening. Ammo might be making its way up to the guns sometimes while they're in the field. The abstraction might not be a bad thing. So what do we have as a situation? This is, I'll hit some special rules in a little bit, but this is what part of the Antietam campaign, or the campaign that culminates in Antietam. And what do we have here? Lee just discovers that his special orders have been captured, that McClellan has a copy of the orders. And in fact, the general here, D.H. Hill, it's his orders that didn't make it. What happened was kind of a weird situation around that, which is that, I think it was Longstreet, or was it Jackson? Anyway, someone forwarded on a copy of the orders to Hill. So he thought he received what he was supposed to receive. At the same time, and didn't send back, hey, you want me to do anything, bud? At the same time, though, Lee's staff wasn't really tracking whether the orders got anywhere or not beyond, some kind of acceptance of them. Anyway, at about this point, Lee realizes the orders have fallen into the enemy's hands. His whole campaign is largely compromised, and in particular, a very lightly held area here to the north is potentially able to be overrun by the Union. He doesn't want the Union withdrawing to the north and into closer protection to Washington, so he reinforces Hill. And what we end up having is something of a last-ditch defense, one which was brutally fought, but which Hill basically manages to hold off, the Union 9th Corps of the Potomac Army. And what we've got here is all of the setups of the reinforcements, and I've moved the 9 a.m. reinforcements to the Union coming in. I've also set up my orders. We've got some Union Cav on the board. I've decided that they don't have orders. Again, earlier systems would have probably given them defensive orders, but they specify here no orders and just say they're defending the National Road. I'm playing with defensive orders. Should they have orders or not? My feeling is no. They're meant there more as a screen than anything else. They'll be able to move around a little bit, but they're just trying to prevent Confederates from interdicting that road and bringing the forces onto the board. That's okay because the Confederates have totally different orders. They're not interested in that. Strangely, their orders are all listed as complex orders, which means they have the right to fight their way to the location. But they're these sort of mixed orders that I feel have to be added to the game when you're using defensive orders, which is complex orders that result in a defensive order so that your unit doesn't break once it's reached its location. So it's easier to maintain defensive orders than it is to maintain an attack order. If you're given an attack order to take a location and then dig in or, defend or whatever, well, that no longer really is a complex order, so you shouldn't be penalized for that. So I kind of tinker with the rules with that. And these orders both seem to be of that nature. One of them is for Garland's detached brigade, which is this little force here, which has orders to defend Fox's Gap. And you'll notice the map is a little different here. We've got clear lines of contour lines. We've also got these kind of splash marks. This is not the standard CWB or even RSS design of maps. And when I first looked at it, I said, wow, that looks kind of amateurish. Well, I mean, the gamers' maps always look a little funky to me compared to, say, the beauty of the old TSS or even the later run of the Great Battles of American Civil War under SPI. Once TSR takes it over, they start looking horrible and much, much worse than this. I've gotten kind of used to the gamers' maps. The first editions of them were a little bit worse, and there were garish colors. These aren't too bad. They're kind of more muted than some of them. Some of them have these bright oranges and stuff. What's not in here is the different terrain levels, but they're signified by these slopes. Now, what's tricky with the slopes, they're handling information that used to be handled with kind of a severe graphic that looked like a cliff or something like that. A single line is going to be a normal slope on the terrain effects, and that'll be an up-down elevation. A slope will be 2 lines together, I believe, and 3 lines is an extreme slope. An extreme slope will be unable to be walked over. It's, you know, almost a cliff. You can't move a military unit over it. You'd need rock climbers or something like that. Now, these splash marks have their own effect, which are sloping ground, which just indicates that the curvature of the ground in that area is rough enough, even if there isn't a slope exchange, although there often is, to add to the difficulty in moving over that terrain. Kind of a nice move. I don't like necessarily the way it looks on the map. I think, like I said, that part looks kind of amateurish, as do the lines to me. I know contour maps are kind of common, but it just in terms of game design appearance, maybe it's just that I'm not used to it, but it looks childlike. Anyway, what else do we have here? Some new rules here. We got some little creeks that have no effect on play, along with, there's a stream here. These little creeks that have no effect on play are just there to distract you and make you look up to see, oh yeah, they have no effect on play. Nah, they add some visual to the whole thing. Orchards are line of sight blockers. Woods and such not give. Okay, one interesting thing in the gamers games is the woods don't give you a defensive bonus. I know a lot of people, well, I can't find it here. It'll be on the fire combat results or something. They block line of sight, but they don't give you any defensive bonus. And the reason for that is, if you were fighting in the woods against somebody who's pretty much in the woods, you're going to be fighting at really close range, closer than normal. Casualties actually tended to be higher, so there was no defensive bonus to being in it. On the other hand, sometimes the fighting would calm down quicker or more easily than in other locations. So they said, oh, and they even that balances out. What never happened was nobody hid in the woods 4 feet in unless they were just trying to remain hidden for a surprise move and exchanged fire at that. Your unit would be so disorganized and broken up by the woods and the other guy's not facing that issue, it just didn't make sense. However, many games seem to give you this bonus as though you're hiding behind the woods in some story about Lexington and Concord. You know how many casualties the rebels suffered nothing, but the Brits didn't suffer much either. They had like 4 or 5 casualties on that march, I think. I mean, it's just, you know, it's portrayed to the American kids, at least when I was young. Oh, stupid Brits marching in red down in their lines, right by all kind of people taking pot shots at them. Yeah, except the people were too afraid to come anywhere near close enough to do any real damage. So it's not like their army was wiped out. They took a couple of casualties. Probably more woundings, but there were a couple of deaths. Anyway, let's... I forgot to mention the other Confederate order, which is the rest of D.H. Hill's command, which has orders to move to position to defend Turner's Gap and Frosttown Road. Now that's a very broad order in my view. What I'm going to do is set up a defensive position and then call it a defensive order and not stretch any further. But the way it's worded, this is one that I would never write. But the gamers often put these in. Okay, Turner's Gap is here. I can defend that pretty easily. These guys are probably further ahead than I would have allowed with a defend Turner's Gap. You know, how far can you defend it up here, right? I would actually have said, you know, maybe the hex row that I more or less wanted to center the defense on with an overall goal of defending Turner's Gap. Maybe I'm a little stricter on orders writing than some are. And Frosttown Road. Well, Frosttown Road goes at least down to Frosttown, and it looks like maybe further. If you give orders like that, it's just free enough that I could take this entire area. Now, maybe that's what's intended. Maybe that's not what's not. I don't know. But essentially, at some point or another, I'll drop it to a defensive order. You know, if it said defend from Turner's Gap to Frosttown Road, or from here to Frosttown Road, or to Frosttown, I could deal with that, right? But I cannot cope with defending this road that could go on forever. Right? Give me some limitation on it, right? Anyway, I'll try to work as best as I can with that. I would have definitely been a little bit more strict. We got special rules for the command. All right. Now this comes to the kind of annoying stuff where I have not internalized these at all. I've read them, but I don't know them, and I know that they fucked with the command rules. Okay, Burnside's the wing commander, is a wing commander for all Union forces. Reno is in command of the 9th Corps, but McClellan is on the field, so Burnside doesn't have any real effect in the game. He only has an effect if either McClellan or Reno becomes a casualty, in which case he can replace either one. Otherwise, he can't issue or receive orders or use initiative, but he can go around rallying troops for whatever that's worth. I'm sure Burnside is somewhat valuable with that. Some units are assigned directly to the Corps. They must remain within a radius of their Corps headquarters, and they can never leave it out of that radius. The Union 1st Corps can detach a division. The Union 1st Corps divisions can each detach a brigade. The 9th Corps can detach 2 divisions, but no brigades. And no attachments are allowed, so you can't move forces from one command to another. Confederate special rules. Okay, the Army of Northern Virginia is not yet organized. Yeah, this is what I don't like, but into the more rigid corps structure seen later. So individual divisions and brigades will fight. Since Lee's not on the field, all orders are issued by leader initiative. Once Longstreet arrives, he can use his own initiative to then issue orders, but he's not allowed to just write orders and take command of the field. Unless he can use his initiative to issue orders to any divisional leader or brigade leader he's stacked with, except for leaders in D.H. Hill's division. On successful initiative, Longstreet can issue orders to a division leader or one order to division or one order to a brigade. If Longstreet becomes a casualty, well, then you're still screwed. But you don't get much here, right? I mean, only able to issue orders on an initiative roll. I didn't explain initiative, but essentially, I don't think, you roll on this table, and it's based on your leadership rating, and I'm sure Longstreet's very good here. So he has, you know, a 1 in 6 chance or so of a little bit better of getting a chance to write an order, which still has to go through the acceptance in-person verbal. But he does have a chance of a loose cannon, and this is the only way that the Confederate commanders are going to be able to take orders, is through personal initiative. In fact, Hill can't write orders to bring Garland back, although I think since Garland's directly under his command, he could roll an initiative to try to say that he'll decide to recall Garland, and that'll work as an order. Anyway, I hate trying to cope with this kind of much less clean system of orders writing. It certainly creates more problems for the Confederates. That's not the big issue for me, though. The big issue for me is there's a nice, clean system in place that could have been used. give Longstreet worse ratings to reflect it or something. I don't know. Anyway, it just irritates me because what I love most about CWB is how the orders work well. Well, here, if you want to do anything, you have to roll dice. You have to roll dice again and again and again until you get a successful initiative. What happens if you're a loose cannon? Again, something I didn't explain. These are kind of rare, but basically you get a one turn. Your enemy gets to write the orders for you, and they can't take more than one turn. He can send you in a bad direction. He could send you to attack someplace you don't want to do, even fairly brusquely or briskly, but you won't keep going with those orders. Even if you want to, you can't keep going. All right. So until Longstreet shows up, D.H. Hill can use initiative to issue orders to any division leader that he's stacked with, or brigade leader. On successful initiative, he can issue one order to a divisional leader, which could be himself. I wonder if he has to follow that. I assume not. Or he can issue to any two brigade leaders. When attempting initiative, he ignores loose cannon results and is the only leader in the game that may do so. Is he the only leader who can write initiative orders? Hard to tell what they're trying to say with that. Or is he just the only one who ignores loose cannons? When Longstreet arrives, Hill reverts to normal command of his division, and the exception to loose cannon is revoked. But remember, Longstreet can't send Hill orders. Hill won't listen. The divisions of Hill and Jones can each detach up to 3 brigades. Hood's division, with only 2 brigades present, may not create detachments. No attachments allowed. There's reserve artillery, 5 batteries from the Army Reserve. These units may trace command to any Confederate brigade leader or brigade headquarters, and they can change from one unit to another without orders. There's an independent 5th Cavalry, Virginia Cavalry, that's up here. I've got them dismounted for some reason. I probably want to mount them. The enemy's far away. They're exempt from any command restrictions. Confederate units resupply from the wing supply wagon. There's no army train, so artillery trace supplies to the wing supply or to a road hex on the west edge of the map. I'm hoping that's the west edge. I don't see my little... Oh, here it is. No, that's north, so that's west. Okay. Okay, special new rules for this battle because apparently the RSS doesn't work without these, actually. During the movement phase, any unit that wishes to leave an enemy zone of control must make a morale check before moving. Uses the morale check of the moving unit or the top unit in a stack that's moving without any modifiers. Bloodlust and units entering close combat don't make it. If you get a good result, really shaken or better, you can move normally, but you don't get a marker, your status doesn't change. Any other result with a retreat is executed immediately as a retreat, and the movement for the affected unit or stack ends. The appropriate morale marker is there, and you execute the retreat normally, including straggler losses. Apparently they threw this into a fearful slaughter, and it goes to prevent phased retreats in the regimental series, which obviously will work exactly the same in the CWB, but they didn't cause a problem there or something. I don't know. The two systems are so similar that it's hard to accept that, but okay. Victory in the end is going to be a set of terrain objectives, which are marked in the map with a VP marker. Currently, the Confederates probably hold enough points to win, so it's going to be up to the Union to take some things. There's some key ones. The Union needs to kind of hold on to these. That's sort of their default. If they lose those, they've really screwed up because the Confederates are just defending. There's a couple over here that are up for grabs, but most of the rest are under the Confederate force or behind it and will really have to be dealt with. You also get victory points for wrecking formations. Doesn't look like there's anything specific for casualties, which is interesting. There's a casualty record track, no counters to go on it. I'm not sure why it exists, but okay. Mainly, that's my artillery record tracks. I would rather have them on the map, but they took all the tracks off the map and put them on cards to save more space, give a little bit more maneuver room. but those things take up room that I don't like losing on my table. Of course, I could slide a big chunk of it under, have the 2 artillery ammunition tracks and the time track all in one kind of place, and make things easier. If I end up needing the space, I'll do that. Because there really is nothing else on those player aid cards. Keeping dead and wounded leaders in a thing, nah, that's not necessary. And destroyed units, nah, they go back in the bag. All right. Setup. One thing about setup for all gamers games, it takes a little while to get used to their notation for how to set up units. They don't give you a straight hex number or something in a lot of cases. So it's not so bad here because it doesn't have extended lines, but they give you something like this. Okay, that's great. That's an actual hex, and you then have to count and find it. But in some cases, let's see, you'll get things like this one actually is very good compared to others. But you'll get something like all within 5 of a certain hex, and you just have to be able to decode that. Some of them, they don't tell you where some things that start on the map go, in the CWB at least, actually go, and you kind of have to intuit it. Now, one thing I have to try to intuit is what the hell these pieces are for, because they're not explained in any of the rules. These section pieces, they look like some way to detach guns, but that's specifically forbidden in the RSS, and there's no special rules about them. So they're just some extra counters I have. I guess I can use them to track casualties if I want. I really don't know. I don't know at all what they're supposed to be there for. Extra crud, I guess. I don't know. All right, well, we're ready to start and play out at least a couple of turns as the approach goes on this video. Probably a different video before anything gets interesting, where you really want to see, how the mechanisms work, especially the combat, because there's when you make a fire roll, there's a lot of die rolling involved, and there's a basic suggestion from the designer on the CWB side. You take dice to roll the initial fire table, the morale roll, and the straggler table, and you're basically rolling 5 dice at once, 2 pairs of 6-siders, and then a separate one for the straggler. So you need a variety of dice to play this game. It does speed things up tremendously. It may not seem it at first. You're kind of like, well, I'm not really used to the charts. I got to look this up, figure this out. But when it comes down to it, once you get really used to the system, rolling a bunch of dice at once is much faster than picking up dice and rolling them again and again and again. Okay, we're beginning the deployment stage of the game, essentially, as we move to the 9:15 a.m. turn. We have part of the 9th Corps, the 1K. This is, K, who's that? Ken. I'm trying to remember who that is. Oh, I have him on the board here. No, that's Cox's command. I don't know what the K is for. Moving up with orders, which I add. These are already written for them, and I've had to make random events checks at the beginning of each orders phase, in addition to all the other tactics that one will do there. Basically, the Union gets a random event on a 10 or higher, the Confederates on an 11 or higher, and 2 dice. By the way, here's my set of dice. Basic combat roll, morale check, straggler check. There's times when you might want more dice, but that's generally what I'll be using. He's got orders to advance to the northwest and capture Fox's Gap. Those I can accept as just pure complex orders, because once I get to Fox's Gap, do I want to sit there and defend it? I don't know. So I'd rather leave that as an open question. So if he gets it and feels like he completely controls it, then he drops into no orders status, which by the optional orders rules from CWB means that it's a little easier to obtain new orders. A little easier than normal, but it makes getting new orders even from a defensive position much more difficult. Got the Cav just sitting here. They haven't done anything yet. I may want to try to make an initiative for them, see if they can go somewhere else. Confederates streaming up in to defend Fox's Gap. These guys are all still in column here. The artillery is still limbered. These guys are in column as well. I'm leaving Colquitt here. I don't think he can push any further, but he's getting the artillery pushing into range for him. And the rest of Hill's, well, Anderson's, are these corps? Hill, I think, is just a division, so that's going to be Anderson's brigade moving into place here. And it's taking this high ground up here. Again, splitting my artillery, some of it to face where I have to actually fight, and some of it up on the hill to help dominate the terrain a little better. We'll see how that works. There's a lot of woods here, but if you recall, the way the line of sight generally works, these guys are a problem because that terrain is up there, but this is where they started. That's going to be tough to see through. I don't know if I'm going to be able to judge that that line of sight exists. That's the problem I have. The game has them set up there, but I'm not sure with my knowledge of the line of sight rules. So first of all, if this is adjudged as at that same height with trees, that blocks it. I can't see beyond that. So I don't want to unlimber there. But if the terrain directly below me is that level, then that's also a problem, if I recall. There is blocking terrain lower. I gotta look at this and I'll come back with it. Because I just don't, my understanding of the game, you can't see through this crap on a hill like this. I think I'm mistaken. The trees don't add as much to the terrain in this as they would in Great Battles of American Civil War. So if I shift to here, I don't have trees at the same level blocking my vision. And now what's below me at lower levels, these guys add a level of terrain to the space that they're in. What I'm seeing here, these guys are going to be the same level as my guns are. Now what they may be saying is that essentially this is the higher terrain, but I don't buy that. Of course, this is supposed to be not, I don't know. You know, I just don't know. A line of sight is always a bitch because if you think about a mountain like this with trees on it, chances are you're going to have a hard time finding clear shots down to the valley. That's the problem. But if I look at this, I'm going to be saying, well, that's a pretty steep slope there. So that's going to be just one level higher. There's a decent cutoff. That's the same level as I'm at. So then I stretch back here, and that says I'm higher up than that same level that I'm at here. And then likewise with this and with this. So I've got a pretty good view of what's under me. There's a lot of trees between us, but I'm on a steep enough slope that I can see down or whatever. But that steep enough slope is just one level. As long as you're one level higher at every branch, at any branch, you pretty much can see down it. And I think that's giving far too much line of sight compared to what it should. On the other hand, I feel that Terrible Swift Swords rules, which are somewhat similar and handle a similar circumstance, give you too little, sometimes way too little. If these trees here are blocking these trees, are blocking these trees, then are blocking a line of units, you can't see anything, even though you theoretically could see stuff way out here. The real question is what the dead zone created by this is. And there doesn't seem to be one. We're on a steep enough hill that I think I can see everything down there. Or at least that's what I'm going to pretend for now. It takes a while to figure out a line of sight when you look at the terrain for the first time. Then once you settle on it, hey, you just keep playing with it, right? All right, let's get a little bit more done, a little bit more of the maneuvering. We got some more Union troops. Okay, very briefly, the Union, just artillery and some cav branching out here. And I have a little leeway as to how I conduct my attack. I don't have to straight up run forward or anything like that. Actually, I have more tactical leeway maybe than in a game like Musket and Pike, where a charge requires that you keep getting closer or something like that. There's quite a bit of, hey, play around with this. This is meant as a somewhat of a further hindrance, but don't look at it as this will skew your orders. It's not something that's going to force units that are charging to keep charging or anything like that. It's that the commander is continuing his intended purpose, is basically. Anyway, we got the Confederates beginning to set up here, unlimbering some of their guns, and likewise here. Up here I ran into a problem. This hex I couldn't even be in. It turns out that is a slope or wooded slope, and those are actually prohibited to artillery or wagon. Kind of makes sense. I would say you can't even deploy on one of those on a road. Probably, maybe, I don't know. May have to use some common sense as to how you would get there on the road. So for example, it might make sense if you're facing this way, but it wouldn't make sense if you're facing down the road necessarily, although there'd probably be a level area around the road. So I don't know. I guess if you can get there, you could unlimber in it. Anyway, onward here. So I had to move those, and I've got two guns up there. Now one's a Type R, which is fine. That's a rifled musket. This L, I'm not sure what the hell that is, so I have to look and make sure I've got my gun where I want them. Because if I don't, maybe I'll move them somewhere else. An L is similar to a rifle. It only goes out to 10 hexes, though. I'm probably okay with that because I'm trying to dominate this little valley. But no long-range artillery duels with those suckers, I guess. And I realized I forgot to roll the random events for the Confederates. I rolled one, got a 12, ended up getting where this entire formation is going to have to get, basically then you roll another d12 or 2d6. I ended up with that formation up there. Colquitt is going to have to make a morale check for no real reason. They're just having some troubles. So the way we handle that, let me show you an example of a morale check. And I kind of wish I could, index my videos. I remember Marco used to do this. I don't know if he still does. But I just can't put that effort in. And as I've said with many people, there's some reason, with the intros it makes sense, but with these it's hard to show where something is shown. So I need to open up my charts and tables. And we simply, I'll show you one and then come back after I do the rest. So this guy has a morale of C. We go through all these shifts to see if anything applies. And honestly, nothing does because I'm not being fired on, to tell you the truth. Some of them might, let's see, combined arms, infantry, and artillery stacked together, unlimbered artillery stacked together. That'll give a +1. To the rows on the shift table. Some of these others, none of them are going to really matter because nothing's happened. So we were a C here with no modifiers, and all we do is we look on the C table. I grab a couple of dice, and I really miss having a red die in here. I'm going to switch, I think. I make a quick roll. I get a 34, which means they're just shaken. Now, it's possible I could get some stragglers or something. And the way we mark all morale states is with a little counter in this game. It's not like the Great Battles of American Civil War, where routed's on the other side. In this case, column formation's on the other side, which makes more sense. Well, in terms of just sense, it makes more sense to have counters for one thing, the morale state and hold formation. Given that mounted cav have their own formation on the back in both systems, kind of makes sense that the infantry would as well. However, there may be a countermix issue in question here. There may be more routed units. It's easier to flag a line in column with counters saying that they're in column. So I can go either way with it. Anyway, I'll take care of the rest of these. There's going to be a modifier from him. He's going to give a +1 column because his leadership value there. Having some trouble deploying these other units that started going up the hill. Now they're going through some really icky terrain. They'll be in place fine because there's nothing heading their way. I don't know how to cover this side of Fox's Gap, though. I may have to fall back if the Union tried to go in that direction. But as it is, They were just trying to rush up as fast as they can to get to unprepared Confederate positions. It looks like the rebels are going to have a chance to get their positions prepared in time. So whatever it was just some sort of command disruption or something. What we got is a bunch of shaken units. One got shaken back one, but he was stacked with artillery, so unlimbered artillery, so he was able to stay where he is. Nobody took any stragglers. Got a couple of bloodlusts. Now we go to the rally phase, and essentially all of this goes away. Bloodlusts automatically disappear if you're not adjacent, and the shakens just sort of mechanically repair themselves. So that was not much of a random event, but you could see where that could have problems with a unit that was already damaged, who has some penalties on their morale because they're wrecked or something like that. Could cause some additional straggling. It could also shake something up just as the enemy is coming to it, but as it stands here, it was of no effect. No biggie there. That means we're going to move to the half-hour turn. I think I'll try to get that first hour in on this video. And then later videos will probably be from a much higher view, not worrying about even the little amount of detail that I'm covering here, but catching sort of the flow of the... The Union got an event for themselves, and this one delayed these reinforcements that were to come in this turn for another half hour. That's going to also cause some congestion on the roads, because these guys, I think, are probably coming in the same general area. It also meant these guys the K9s are marching forward into kind of an ugly situation, because the Confederates are now set up here. I was trying to rush up to beat them, but they're set up with guns. These guys haven't unlimbered yet, but others have, and now the Confederates get their defensive fire against this advance. I sent the cav up here and dismounted it to provide a skirmishing attack on the flank here, where there isn't a lot of defense in terms of what the Confederates have put in play. Let's take a look at what a firing decision and the implementation is. This is going to be kind of in-depth and a little painful to proceed with, because there are a lot of steps in it, but it's okay. It's no worse than anything like Great Battles of History, for example. Okay, and we've done this before with the GBA ACW stuff. So these Confederates are actually dismounted. I have 7 small arm rifle that I can fire. And here I have to look at, well, first of all, I've got rifles. And if I'm going to split fire, I have to do it at the same range. So I could do it between those at range 2. That's going to be ×1. Ranges only go out to 3 in this game. It's still a smaller scale, a larger scale than Terrible Swift Sword is, for example. So I've got, 7 strength points. And now the question is, well, where do I want to be on this combat table? And the combat table is a little different from what you're used to in CWB. For one thing, there's no halves on here, which is cool, because it means I can use 1 less die in my system. Anyway, I'm going to be using 2 dice to roll combat. I could either fire on this, which looks like about the best I can do. It looks better than rolling on the 4 and the 3 table in terms of getting actual losses. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to fire. What am I going to shoot at? I'm, not paying attention maybe to morale or whatever, but these guys look like they're armed with carbines. Uh-oh. Nasty stuff. I'm going to fire, I think, at this if I can see him. I don't see why I can't. The line traces up this way. He's down the hill. I'm going to just try to pluck off that lead unit. He's only 1 strength point, so if I get an actual hit, I'll kill him. I want a high roll for that. Now, I'm going to roll these extra dice here, normally. But this time, I'm going to pulse it to show you, because chances are I don't do anything much at all. So I roll a 3, which, if we look, doesn't do anything. It's not an 11 or 12. These should be marked. I'll probably add a notation in there that those are going to be low ammo markers. So I did no damage at all. Let's keep going so that I can get one where I do get to do damage. These guys are at range 2 here. Now, if I look up the stone wall, that provides a defensive bonus if you're standing right at it. I'm not sure, but I think I'll be giving it to this. Just, it's right down the hex line, basically. I don't know how else to view that, really. So I've got another 7 strength points of rifle. That's going to just be 7 guns. I could turn some of them out there instead. Well, I could turn all of them out there instead. But you'll see that's halved. So I want to shoot at the better distance there. So we're on the same table there. And we'll pulse it again into multiple dice. So here I get a 5. A 5. Oh, I'm down 1 column from the wall, so that still does nothing. We're not getting a lot of bang for our buck here with these guns. Final guy, I can't see through these woods, I don't think. I might be able to see through these, but I don't want to think about it too much. I've got 4 guns at range 3. That's going to be on the tiny little 2 chart. It's almost not worth firing, but I'll do so. Woo! Okay. A 12 means I get a low ammo marker. Which is going to cause problems because my ammunition supply is way back here. He may be running out of ammo for the whole unit there. But it also means a casualty. That's on the Chicago Dragoons under K9. So are they a number? They look like they're 1K9. What are they called? They're the 1K9. I'm looking for a number on them. All I see is Chicago Dragoons, and I do not see the unit. Uh-oh. Oh, there they are. They should be under the 1K9, and they're recorded under the 2K9 for some reason. Now, because I want to reuse these, I gotta find a pencil. And I took a casualty on those Chicago Dragoons. Now, I'm gonna rewrite them because I don't like where they are. They're in the wrong. I think actually they came in at the wrong time. I think they're misprinted on the counter. Regardless, I'd have to change a lot because there's 4 regiments here. I'm going to say they're temporarily attached to the 1K9, but they're going to affect the 2K9. So what I do is I mark this with an X or I fill it in or something like that. That's an actual casualty. I can't get that back. And this is a wrecked brigade now, and it's permanently wrecked, so I'll fill it in there. But I'm not done yet. Now normally I would have rolled all the dice at once and assessed them at a time. Now what I have to do, and I'll roll the rest of the dice together just to show that, is I'm going to be doing a morale check and a straggler check. Now this is what happens. You roll all 5 dice at once, you see if the hit happens, and then you assess these after you take care of that hit. Okay, for a morale check, I got a 61. And this is a B morale unit, which is wrecked now. That should have an effect. There it is. Wrecked regiment is -4. Wrecked brigade will add another -6 in there. You don't go up to division level at this in this game. So I was a B morale at 2, 4, 6 rows down, or no, 4 rows down, and I rolled a 61. That's going to be a disorganized back 3, lose 1. Well, all of that can be ignored because I've just taken a straggler loss. And this piece is essentially out of play for a while. It could come back if it recovered stragglers, but right now it's gone. I don't have to worry about it, an additional straggler check, but had I done so, it was a B morale of a routed or wrecked regiment target. The result was a 1 or less, and I rolled a 2 on the die roll, so I wouldn't have taken any additional stragglers outside of the morale check phase. So that's one thing. A unit can hold good morale but still lose some men to straggling. I think that showed more or less what a single fire is like. They're a lot faster though when you throw all the dice together, and you know, if I'm not explaining everything on camera, obviously. It's actually a fairly fast combat system. Using the dice together the way Dean suggests, it probably makes it faster than any other tactical system that I know of, which kind of leads you to say, well, I should do that kind of cleverness with everything, but I'm not that clever. All right. Notice I've got some artillery fire, and that's something else different I want to emphasize here. So I've got some rifled guns, 4 points of that, and I'm going to try to combine these 3 riflemen. To do that, I'm going to fire the artillery, so I spend 1 ammo. I'm at range 2 with a rifled artillery, which is going to be on the artillery table for R. Range 2, that's going to be doubled. So I have 4 strength points of artillery there. Now I'm going to have to start checking the regimental loss charts for the strength points. Normally you'd be playing with little markers like this under the counters to indicate what the fire strength is. That gets kind of annoying to me, and I've gotten used to my CWB games looking it up on paper. That could also be a problem though. You know, no matter what, there's a lot of information to convey. Which way do you want to do it? I'm going to try using the regimental charts as my source of information, because I can't keep track of it on paper. Or I can't keep track of it on the counters and on paper at the same time. So anyway, I have 4 strength points to that gun. And let's make sure that gun is recorded here. That's the Pelham B Independent. That's going to be on the Confederate charts. Okay. So it doesn't look like guns are recorded here. It looks like just infantry, which means I am going to have to record guns with strength points under them. You had to do this in CWB as well. Such is life. I was just hoping there was charts for the guns too. So yeah, that's going to be 8 strength points for the guns, and then the rifles are also at range 2. That's going to be another 3. So I'm going to be on the 11 table. That's not a good table. I'm not going to fire the infantry. The infantry is going to fire at this unit, I guess. And now we roll them all, and we'll see how this works. And when you're not holding a camera in your hand, this is a lot easier. 10's a good roll, no low ammo on that. I cause a casualty. That's going to go to the 1K9, 1 West Virginia. Or is that just West Virginia? Yeah. And that takes a casualty. That's a permanently wrecked unit now, which means I look at its morale, a C morale. Oh man, that's horsemen. They just hit their calf. Yeah, I think the Chicago Dragoons shouldn't be in there. I think they're mismarked. Where were they? Well, they're dead now. I think they should be 2K9. That's probably a typo. Oh well, they showed up early this battle. So now I'm a, C morale, down 4 for wrecked unit. I rolled a 36, 3 and 6 there. So I'm going to get a shaken back 1. This time I'm not destroyed. Yet. He's going to fall back a hex, but let's check his Straggler table. I'm a wrecked unit, so I get +2 to the die roll. A roll of 3 makes 5. I do straggle, and there goes the West Virginia Dragoons as well. So normally they'd have retreated, say, back here so that they don't shake the morale of this, but they're just gone instead. We're melting away some of that Union attack pretty quickly. All right, I got one more shot here at really close range. I don't have to worry about distinguishing whether I'm firing canister or shot anymore, because the game doesn't come with the ammo. Not just without the ammo markers, I could have substituted them, but it doesn't come up with the ammo distribution for the supply wagons. And without that information, and I didn't want to look it up, it just doesn't make sense. The Union obviously took pretty much of a drubbing in this initial advance, although they got some firing back. First of all, there's this huge cav unit, a 10 carbine unit. I split fire from that, half of it going into the limbered artillery and half of it going into this unit. Did some definite casualties. We can see the artillery actually lost a strength point. I don't know how to record that. It's pointed north or to the top of the counter. I should just use regular good old normal counters. There's no way to record it on the sheets because they don't have the artillery in there, but these damn stupid little counters with the rotating numbers, I'll never keep them straight. So I'll probably pull that out and replace it with some counters from another game. And then here also some heavy fire coming back, and you can see these guys must have been effective because they're low ammo, and that counts for the artillery too. They're low ammo, unless the firing chart's changed, is a penalty. Yeah, you get a column shift against you when you fire for low ammo. It's also a penalty for morale checks. But if you get low ammo, if you roll an 11 or 12 while you're low ammo, you're out of ammo, and then you don't get to shoot anymore at all. The Union doesn't really have any rally actions to take. Their units either dissolved or are still there. Now, this is a half-hour turn, so had they set up already, had they lost those units already, they could have done straggler recovery on them. But they've done it. K9 has taken a pretty heavy hit on their first approach here and are not in good shape. I'm going to seriously be considering trying to take an initiative or something to try to at least relieve them from the need to attack until the rest of the corps makes it up, because they're just going to get decimated up here alone. Meanwhile, we go to the Confederate turn. Now, had I lost any units here, I would get to do straggler recovery. For the most part, I'm going to be shifting these guys, trying to build up the defenses, but I got to figure out what to do with that, with the units that are under fire right now, and how to deploy them to best repulse the remains of that Union advance. I realized I made a mistake, no big shock there. When I was discussing the fire from this unit, it's a 10-point unit, but there's a limit to how much you can fire from any given hex. Only 8 strength points can. Now, the fire split at 10 because of the carbines ended up 20 strength points. It would have been 10 into each hex. And if only 8 strength points fired, it would be a 16-point fire. So it would actually be on the same column. So there wasn't any effect to my being mistaken. I just wanted to clarify because I know some people are watching maybe to understand rules or something. I'm the worst person in the world to do that for. But anyway, on to the rebel turn here, which I should have marked this way. To question these dice, they've rolled very high a couple of times at key times. First the random events a couple of times, and then on the fire combat we saw some pretty extreme rolls. I'll trust them, but they're going to create an interesting situation if they keep doing that. Confederates have tried, first of all, they've tried, D.H. Hill tried to roll for initiative so he can like react to this situation by taking orders under advisement to detach another of his brigades over here to the Fox's Gap area. It looks to me like that's where the fighting's going to be. There's no Union troops coming in for a while. I really have to reinforce that if I want to defend the line there, but as it stands, I may have to fall back and lose this victory point hex, which may be a valuable one. I wouldn't be surprised. As the Confederates, though, do throw some more units in the line, including this one. You can see it's a musket unit. That's why I'm so close, because they don't have rifled muskets. They have smoothbore. And if you look on the chart, not surprisingly, given that the distance is even greater in this than in TSS, they're very good at close combat, good at 1 hex, but 2 hexes is their maximum, and they're halved there. So in order to get my firepower in, I want to move up. Well, moving up against carbine-armed Cav is probably not a good idea. I'm going to expect that thing to dissolve. It's kind of a problem in this system because you can't extend lines. I've got this unit, yes, it's still under the maximum strength, but I have no way to break it up and water it down the way I'm used to in the CWB games. I can interspace my units, but that causes some serious problems in terms of opening up flanks and stuff that can be hit. So it feels a little funny not being able to do that. That was always something I liked about the CWB, is I could extend lines in both directions and cover 3 times the area that my counters could. But with the bigger units, I can't cover more ground with them than these little guys do. And that's kind of an issue. Moved him over here to help rally this unit. After I do the fire combat, I'll come back, and then I'll probably load this one up, because I've been talking for a long time on it. And some more lively fire. The Union got a low ammo marker here without doing any casualties, though. But the Confederates mainly managed to punch some holes, and that Union Cav destroyed another unit completely. They lost one of their own, though, in the line there against that big fire. That's going to push us to the 9:45 turn, and I'm not going to go for the whole hour here. I'm only going to settle for a half hour. I'll talk less in some of the other turns, but this one I felt I needed to show the system off a little bit more than I had before. Well, I mean, this is a situation where there's insufficient Confederate troops to hold the gap against what's coming at it, the 9th Corps, but what's there right now, they're piecing pretty much. All right, let's send this one up.